Hi, you've clicked onto today's tropical tidbit for Thursday. For some reason the wide visible loops will not work for me today, so I decided to show you these pretty colors instead. And check it out over here in the Atlantic. No Cape Verde storms out here. Check it out. And look, we got the ghost of Juliet and struggling Lisa over here, but nothing going on in this area of the Atlantic. And guess what that means? That means that the Caribbean can now be allowed to fire up, and we see Invest 95L centered over here getting convection going and coming westward, and this is becoming very close to becoming a tropical depression. The recon did not seem to find a very well defined circulation yet, just very weak west-southwest monsoonal winds coming into the circulation. Not really that great yet, but I think this will become a tropical depression before it reaches the Nicaraguan and Honduras coastlines over here. And if we look at the visible, the smaller visible, which is a little harder to see, we can see 95L spinning away over here north of Colombia. This is going to continue westward, and you can see these clouds out in front pointing the way towards where the storm is going to go. You're going to see it come this way and then curve up into the Gulf of Honduras over here, probably clipping or moving over the Honduras and Nicaraguan coasts as it gets into this area. And this is going to be something that Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Mexico are going to have to watch closely for excessive rainfall as this comes in through here, because its process of moving into this area is going to be rather slow and lethargic, and there's likely to be very heavy rainfall generated in this area. You can already see thunderstorms out in front bringing rain to Nicaragua and Honduras, so this is something these folks in Central America will have to watch very closely. Looking at the water vapor, we can see the storm down here, and you can see a trough out in the western United States coming eastward and sort of lifting north as it does. Once it gets over into the eastern United States, there's supposed to be another short wave dropping down behind it that will be sort of splitting off from the main flow. The jet stream is going to remain up here nice and strong, but this short wave is supposed to dip down and get cut off into sort of a cut-off upper low in the central plains or into the eastern United States, sort of meandering around this area. And this is what is supposed to cause a break in the ridge over here. You'll get the Atlantic ridge over here, big western United States ridge. You get this break in the ridge, and that's what should draw 95L eventually northward in here. And I like the general idea of a track that comes over Nicaragua and Honduras into the Gulf of Honduras, and then sort of staying close to the Central American coast, and then coming northeast into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and probably near the Florida area. But there is a lot that can change, and that there's a whole lot of variation that could happen to the situation, because if we get a storm that punches deep into the Nicaraguan and Honduras mainlands and then stays sort of near the land before it comes out, we're going to see a weaker and broader system, whereas if it stays more over the water, it could be a much bigger deal. If we look at the European over here from 0Z, this is 72 hours. You can see it punches the storm in here, and it really tries to jam it into Central America. It kind of loses it, and then by day 5 it tries to reform it out here to the northeast. And day 7, you can see this is 999 millibars moving into Cuba, and then a broad and weak 1000 millibar low moving into Florida by day 8. So not really a big deal shown here on the European. The last couple of runs have shown that. If we look at the GFS, day 5, again, punches it into to Central America, kind of loses it, reforms it broadly over here to the northeast, and then it does get its act together by day 8. You can see something winding up, coming across Cuba and moving into Florida. This is a tighter low than what the European shows, but this doesn't look any bigger than a Cat 1 hurricane on this model here. Still not a really big deal. What's scarier to look at is what the NOGAP shows here on the 0Z. Notice how it really winds this up east of Cozumel here, and this is what can happen if it comes across, just clips the tip here and stays mostly over the water and comes northeastward over here. There's really no reason why this path wouldn't result in this kind of a look here, because again, look at how hot the water is in here. Just boiling hot, bathtub hot in here at a great depth, and there's really no reason why, if the storm were to come into here and slowly fade north-northeast, why it would not wind up in here. If it's not too close to land, this could easily wind up into a rather strong hurricane by the time it gets past Cuba, and this will be the concern for the folks in here, and of course for the United States coastline, if this stays over water longer. Now, we are having a lot of model disagreement on this storm, and you're going to continue to see that because this pattern is, again, very fragile. When you have a whole ton of heat building up in here, what the atmosphere is trying to do is get rid of that. And how that's likely going to happen is by forming a storm named Matthew that gets drawn north. Again, you don't want to punch him right into the eastern Pacific because the water out here is too cold. That is not an efficient distribution of heat. What you want is to get him to come out and deliver the heat into the temperate latitudes. And how we're going to do that is, of course, a trough that recurves the storm, and you can see that the trough on the European over here comes down. Now, the problem is that for the models, the problem here is that you can't necessarily get a nice, clean, deep, long wave trough like an October trough that easily curves the storm out, and a nice clean recurve, no troubles there, nice clean transfer of heat. That's hard to do because when you have a strong La Nina year like this, you're pumping the ridge near the southeastern US, the cold PDO puts the trough over Alaska, and then you start building the heights over here and across the top of the United States, and you're building the Atlantic ridge. It's hard to get a clean trough in here, so you get the jet racing off to the north, and you end up with these cutoff things breaking off from the main flow and then meandering down in here. That's why you see this bowling ball of 500 millibar heights that dives down in here and tries to pick this up. Now, there are some different solutions that are shown. A lot of different things could happen here, and I've seen several different things on the model runs. One is that you can get a bowling ball that just gets completely cut off and sits around in here and then tries to phase with the storm as it comes northeast, or you could have it try to lift out and leave a piece behind. You can see that's what the European does here, sort of lifts the troughs out but leaves some stuff behind and draws the storm up. Or you could have the trough try to leave entirely and you get the ridge more to build in here, and the no gaps was a fan of that last night on the 0Z. Then on the 6Z it showed a bowling ball in here. So there's a lot of jumping around with this, and there's a lot of fragility to this pattern, and a lot of different things can happen. And this is one of the things that we as humans really cannot predict exactly what a bowling ball of low pressure at 500 millibars is going to do over the United States. Those are the kind of physical dynamics that you leave to the computer models to try to work out. But what we can do is remember that the ultimate goal of this is to get all this heat out of the Caribbean and into the temperate latitudes, and that's going to happen in the form of a tropical cyclone. We know that somehow this is likely going to try to come north. There's always a chance that it tries to die in here, but I really think that this will eventually try to come north. My mouse is going nuts. Alright, and so it's going to try to come out, but the models are going to disagree on how that happens. But the general message is that it is going to come up most likely and threaten the United States as well as the Caribbean countries on the way there, and this is something we need to watch very closely. But it's not over after Matthew. Again, this pattern is loaded for October. If we look what happens on the GFS day 10, it takes, as Matthew is going out, look what's left behind over here in the Caribbean, and by day 16, look where we are. Another storm in the Southwest Atlantic Basin. This is the kind of pattern that can really load up and fire storm after storm at the Caribbean islands and the United States coastline. So this is a dangerous pattern I've been warning about, and we need to be on the lookout for the next month at least for multiple threats to our shores. So we will continue to watch future Matthew in the Caribbean, and we shall see what happens. That is it for today. Thanks for watching.